Coming to you live from Georgia, it's the Matt L podcast. My next guest is my friend Manav, Dutta, um, Georgia Tech and Chi Alpha graduate. So, where were you born?
New York City, New York.
How
I'm
long?
a carpetbagger.
Carpetbagger. What do you mean by that?
Someone was born in the north but lives in the south now.
Okay. How long have you lived in the U.S.?
All my life, I was born here.
I've interviewed my friend Mallory, who has Asperger's, and some people have thought I had autism because I've been socially awkward before. Hopefully, I'm less socially awkward now than when I was in college and when I was younger. When or how old were you when you were diagnosed with autism?
Age 3.
We hear about people being on the autism spectrum. Do you think it might be possible that everyone might be somewhere in the spectrum?
Well, technically yes, but most people would fall on like the right side, like towards like having negligible or no symptoms at all.
Do you think it might be possible that I, for example, might be somewhere on the spectrum?
You might be slightly like, if it's like a bell curve where like the farthest left is like really autistic, and you might fall like close to the other end. I mean, there's like a lot of people on the spectrum who are undiagnosed.
I haven't been tested for autism, so I don't know whether this is true or not, but I've been told that I'm borderline. Like, sometimes I know something is wrong, that I shouldn't say something, but I say it anyway.
Oh,
How did you become involved with Chi Alpha Christian Fellowship?
one of my roommates, John Tompkins, introduced me to the group, and I thought they were a really nice bunch of people to hang out with. So I decided to like hang out with them, and we became really close. I met a lot of good people and close friends through that organization.
So now that you've graduated from Georgia Tech, what are you doing now currently?
I'm working as a software engineer at Verizon. Just started my second week today.
What is your take on Bernie Sanders? I know that you really like him.
So I think Bernie he's a really good guy, and I like his integrity, his values, and the fact that he essentially has stuck to the same platform for decades without changing much, if at all. At the same time, I think I've had a real problem with his supporters though, because the issue is that even after it was clear that Bernie had lost the nomination and that Hillary was going to be the nominee, they kept being stubborn and saying, "Oh, we'll never vote for her," and that they said they like they they really took the slogan "Bernie or bust" to heart, and there's still a lot of people out there who aren't willing to give Hillary a chance, like really take a look at her and her policies, because even though she's not, I mean, she's changed her positions a bit, and she's not as progressive as Bernie is, she still has a lot of progressive opinions on issues like healthcare, college tuition. She wants to do something about it. And also, conservative, conservatives don't like her at all.
You know, that's interesting because what I've heard about her was that she was a hawkish Republican until she was in college when she met the man who mentored President Obama, and that sort of shifted her over.
Are you talking about
Bill Ayers or something?
Yeah, Bill Ayers. So she was born into a Republican family. Like in 1964, she campaigned for Barry Goldwater, who was one of the at the time was the leader of the conservative Republicans. At a time when the Republican Party as a whole was a lot more moderate than it is now. And But what did happen is that she became more involved in activism, especially feminist causes, and that's what caused her to switch to the Democratic Party in the early 1970s.
Okay. See, I didn't know that about her. I know that these questions are all over the place. I have more
It's fine.
political questions for you, but what was your favorite part about being a student at Georgia Tech?
Just some of the people that I met, and a lot of some of the classes I took were really interesting. Like they taught me a lot about the theory of computer science and how to apply it, like machine learning, for instance. That's a class where you learn how to get a program to learn how to do things that a human can, like recognize handwriting, tell whether an image is of an apple or an orange, even predict like who's gonna win the next election.
Wow.
Yeah.
I remember that, like, even as a communications major when I was in college, like, there was a lot of theory, a lot
Yeah.
of history and like textbook knowledge.
Nice.
And what was your least favorite part about being a student at Georgia Tech?
Honestly, I feel like it's the general attitude of the place. Like a negative part of text culture is that there's a culture of embracing misery. Like, given the high workload, and the difficulty of the coursework, a lot of students come in and they're not used to having to work so hard, so
Yeah.
they fail. And rather than and they tend to take it personally, and as a result, they're miserable. And what happens is that they become addicted to that sort of misery. Like, they often wear it as a badge of honor that they're miserable and rationalize it by saying that, oh, I'll get a better job, or oh, I'm learning, and that's all them, like, I'm learning and that's how just things are supposed to be. And I never really agree with that mentality.
Yeah, if I remember correctly, is it true that the counseling services or the counseling center at Georgia Tech is often like packed, like fully booked?
Right, because the issue is like they don't have enough counselors to see like the people who have all sorts of problems with anxiety and depression and other mental health issues. And as a result, a lot of students go on suffering because they don't have access to the center. But the issue is that the counseling center was never meant to like help all the students. At best, it can just refer the students to the appropriate resources, like other therapists who were probably better suited to help them. But a lot of students don't really know that, and so they continue suffering, and some of them tragically take their own lives because they can't figure out a way to cope with their problems.
Have a lot of students, Georgia Tech students, committed suicide or attempted suicide?
Not sure about the exact statistics, but there is a alarming number. Like, in the month of March, there were 3 suicides in the College of Sciences alone, all in the span of 2 weeks. And then there was another suicide in April, I think in the same area of the college, and this was just the College of Sciences alone.
Huh. Well, this is a really bad transition, but speaking of things that make people feel depressed and anxious, you really don't like Donald Trump, right?
I don't.
What I think what Trump has going for him is that, and he's hard to beat because he doesn't have to fundraise.
True.
He also has huge name recognition.
Oh yeah.
I'm a fan of his shows, The Apprentice and Celebrity Apprentice. Is there anything you want to promote?
About what?
Like, sometimes I interview people who've been on reality shows.
Yeah.
And I ask them, like, if there's anything they want to promote.
I see. I would promote not voting for Trump.
Okay.
Never Trump. Like, I know if you're a conservative, then voting for Hillary is something that you probably don't want to do, and I can respect that. But in that case, there's a couple of other candidates out there. Like, there's Gary Johnson, for instance, who is in favor of the same small government ideas that the Republican Party tends to emphasize. And there's also a candidate, I think his name is Evan McMullen.
Oh, I haven't heard of it.
Oh, he's a conservative Republican who's running as an independent in this election cycle, and he's definitely a solid alternative to Donald Trump.
So how did he? Because we already had like the 16 or so Republican contenders. So how was he able to slip in there?
Because he found his base. Like, he appealed to a lot of this.
Evan McMullen.
But he also hates Trump's guts, and he's decided to run as an independent candidate.
Okay.
For a lot of Republicans who just don't want to back Trump.
Mm-hmm. So, but what would you say to someone who said a vote for Evan McMullen or Gary Johnson would be a wasted vote not to vote for Hillary or Trump?
Oh, not necessarily, because Donald Trump, he's out there. I feel in this case like Principal Trump's you pick. I mean, you do have to pick the lesser of two evils, essentially, but I mean, you're not directly voting for Hillary. You're voting for someone who shares your principles, your ideas, rather than somebody like Trump who just happens to have been nominated by the party that you normally vote for.
Mm-hmm.
Because Donald Trump has tarnished the name of the Republican Party.
Mm.
He's made them look more bigoted, more out of touch with modern America than even people like what we've normally come to think of them as.
Is there anything you would want to say to our viewers?
I would say don't vote for Donald Trump.
Because?
I mean, he might sound like he knows what he's talking about. He might sound like he knows what he's doing. He might sound like he knows how to end our trade deficit with China, how to balance the budget, how to handle the issue of illegal immigration, but he doesn't. I mean, his ideas are just like trying to build a wall across the entire border with Mexico is not feasible, and it would cost a lot of money that could have been used for other things like paying down the deficit, for instance. And not to mention, I know that a lot of people who vote for Trump are white working class voters that don't like the Democratic Party. They feel that it only cares about the interests of minorities and women, and that the Republican Party establishment doesn't care about them because they want to cut social programs that benefit a lot of these voters. And they're also too pro free trade as well. So what attracted them to Trump is that Trump promised a solution. He promised to cut down on illegal immigration, put tariffs on trade with China to get manufacturing jobs back into the United States, which this group of people in our country feel is the solution to their problems. And while I do agree we need to get more manufacturing jobs back in the country, I don't feel that Trump's policies, like Trump's idea for tariffs, would just lead to a trade war with China, and that would ruin both of our economies. Not to mention the entire global economy. Trump has shown to be a very egotistical, selfish person doesn't. I don't think he'd get along with anybody in Washington or really almost any of the globe. Like he'd get along better with Putin and Kim Jong Un than he would with the British Prime Minister, the German Chancellor, the French President. Like he'd get along better with our enemies than our allies. And finally, he has his finger on the big red button. And imagine if China, for instance, ticks him off to the point where he decides to launch a nuclear attack on them and start World War III. Do you want that possibility? I sure don't.
I feel like I've asked you a lot about politics, so how about a question about you?
Sure.
What was your favorite thing about Chi Alpha?
I like the community of people. Like they were really very nice, very warm people, very accepting of my disability, and they helped me become less socially awkward and come out of my shell more.
Alright, Manav, since you don't like Trump, there's just one more thing.
Sure.
If you're up for it, I want to ask you some questions that Donald Trump asked in the boardroom on The Apprentice.
Sure.
Alright, it's time to play The Apprentice, Chi Alpha, Manav edition. Manav, who in the group would you say is a natural leader?
I would say that Robbie is a natural leader. I mean, he is the leader.
Who would you say is a star?
I would say that, and I mean current or former members.
Either. Alright, Manav,
Questions.
if you were me, who would you fire?
I would fire Kanye West.
Alright, thank you for your time, Manav.
Thanks.
And as always, thank you guys for watching. Hopefully I'm not sitting too close to you, Manav.
You're not.
Space. And hopefully we'll have another interview for you guys soon. And until next time, I'm Matt Levely as Bernie Sanders saying, we're done.
We're
done here. Evan, Colin, Evan,
Alright, whatever. I guess what you want is you want. Okay?
okay, resume.
Well, show your papers with you. Hello. Continue. Just walk in, sit down. Do your introduction.
The wild boys are calling on their way back from the fire.
Don't be up. Walk in the same time or talk. I don't know. Let's talk a little bit. Walk in together and sit down and Matt introduce. Don't really say shake.
Wild boys falling far from glory, reckless and so hungered on the razors that you trail, because there's murder by the roadside in a sore afraid new world. They tried to break us, looks like they'll try again. Wild boys never lose it. Wild boys never chose this way. Wild boys never close your eyes. Wild boys always shine. You got sirens for a welcome. There's blood stain for your pain.
Okay.
And your
Whatever.